Alright, so now I've got to turn my attention, now that I have the bushing on that, I have the bushing over here on this taken care of. Now I'm going to turn my attention to the other area that's giving us a lot of play, and that's this little linkage that was put in there. Now I'm sure this wasn't factory, and actually it was doing the job. It's just that because it's got these eye bolts on the end here, somebody had to doctor it up to make it kind of work. On this end, it's actually pretty tight because someone has put what looks like a hard plastic bushing, or that might even be just a piece of hose that somebody cut. I might take a better look at that in a bit. Got some washers in there, crushed the bejesus out of it. That caused it to expand, and it's in there pretty tight. This end, on the other hand, is a whole nother issue. The screw is too small to begin with, and all they did was throw a lock washer in there and then kind of tighten that up and hope that that wouldn't move, but it loosened up. And this is the bigger issue right here. So I got a bunch of all thread, and so what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually just use this adjusting piece in the middle here and then redo the ends. Come up with something else for the ends. I've got some ideas that I want to maybe give it a shot, but for starters, I'm going to need some all thread that's going to thread into this. I've got a bunch of this size. Unfortunately, that's too big. Now I'm not going to rule that out because I could drill and tap the ends here for this size all thread. Certainly would make it a beefier linkage. But what I'm worried about there is it's going to make that wall thickness on the cross section this way. It's going to make it a little thin. Although that's probably not under a lot of force this way. It's really just a pulling force. I don't know. Well, the other thing is I did find, here's a carriage bolt. If I could find another one of these, I think this is this size. So I did find some other all thread, but it's also wrong size. But I found this carriage bolt. So I'll take this out. And that's the wrong way. Okay. Oh. That's a left-hand thread by design, so that when you turn this turnbuckle, both of these move out or in. In other words, if this wasn't a left-hand thread, what would happen is when you turn this, this one would turn in as this one turned out, and you really wouldn't change the length of this thing. So you can bet this is not going to work. And it doesn't. It's not like I'm going to go and run to the store and find myself some left-hand all thread. It kind of ruins my other plan, which was to get a small piece of stock, drill a hole the right size for a bolt to go through and go through here tightly, and then drill and tap a hole in the end of that stock for this all thread to go into. That's not going to work because then I've got to drill and I've got to tap for a left-hand thread in that hole. Alright, I've come up with a plan. I'm going to not use this at all. I'm going to replace this completely with this. This is actually a linkage off the old Kawasaki Prairie ATV that I ended up scrapping because it was completely junk. Those of you who've seen those videos will see why I ended up trashing it. It was a two-wheel drive older unit, and it just had a train wreck happen inside that motor. But this linkage is actually in pretty decent shape. This these little rubber cups here, Look like they might have a little, no, actually they look okay. Anyways, there's virtually hardly any play in here. A little bit from wear, but nothing I'm going to worry about. It's going to be a big improvement over this. The problem is, of course, it's way longer than it needs to be. And I got a couple of ways I could attack this. I could actually take off one end, cut it to length, turn down the end to the size that I need it to be, and then thread on or cut threads on it, and do that. That's certainly one way to go about it. The other thing I could do is I could just cut this right in the middle and cut out the amount that I would need to cut out to shorten this whole thing, and then put the two pieces back together by drilling holes in each in the end of each one and tapping the holes, and then putting a little threaded rod in the middle there and using the threaded rod to just hold it together. I mean, that would also work. And the question is, what do I really want to do here as far as, well, I'm not confident I'm going to be able to turn down the end of this with a good enough finish to thread. I'm certainly not going to try and thread that on the lathe. I would actually just use a die. But I feel more comfortable in my ability to drill a couple of holes and tap those holes and put a threaded rod in there. Oh yeah, got another good reason why I'm not going to go with what might sound like the better plan, which is cutting this to length, turning down to the diameter to thread the threads on here. This is off of a Kawasaki ATV, so this is all metric. These are 10mm nuts. I don't know what the size of those studs are, or this stud, but I can guarantee you it's metric. So I don't want to mess with that because I don't think I have any metric dies, and I certainly don't have change gears on that Atlas lathe that are going to let me cut metric, or I don't think I do. So I'm gonna go with the easy way out, and I figure I've got some threaded rod here. I'm sure that will work. That's going to be a little too thick because that'll give me a really thin wall on that. So I think we'll go with this threaded rod right here. Might work. Looks pretty good. I'll have to figure out what that is size-wise. Actually, might just cut this long carriage bolt that I found here. Oh, I think I like that even better. This has got a really fine thread on it, whatever this was. And it's got some damage on the threads from beating around, I think. Actually, it's not. Yeah, it's got a couple of nicks and stuff. So we'll probably just use this carriage bolt, cut this off, and do something with that. Alright, so I just took a rough measurement with a scale from the centerline distance from these two bolts. On this one, it's about 6 3/4. Centerline distance between the centerline on these two studs on this one is about 12 3/4. So if I cut 6 inches out of the middle of this rod right here, that should put me just about where I need to be lengthwise. Of course, I've got some adjustment to play with on here. And I think maybe what I'm going to do is loosen these lock nuts and see just how much adjustment is on those, and put them at around the halfway point before I actually, that measurement actually wasn't really relevant. This one was 6 3/4. This one's going to change when I change those adjustments. I just want to make sure I give myself a little bit of wiggle room. And just like on this adjustable turnbuckle, or whatever you want to call it, this one also has a reverse thread on this side, so you would think that would loosen, but it actually tightens that nut, or moves the nut that way when I'm turning it. So if I was going to thread the end, I would also have to make sure I threaded the correct end. Otherwise, I'd have to cut a metric reverse thread, which for an experienced person might not be that big of an issue. Alright, so that's turning in. So let's see. I'll take this one off, and we'll see what we got. A little bit of corrosion in there. Good old white corrosion. Alright. So let's see. Just eyeballing that. That's about halfway. And then about half the thickness of the nut. That should give me it's funny. It's threaded all the way down to here, but I actually don't even think that could possibly even screw in that far. It wanted to. Oh no, I guess it could. It'd be pretty close. It'd be getting all the way into there. Alright, so we're going to go with what I said. About halfway. Should be right about there. Do this one. Of course, this one I got to turn the wrong direction, or the opposite direction, to get it to unscrew. Who am I to say it's the wrong direction? Maybe in some alternate universe, this would be the normal way. Let's see. We'll call that about halfway, and that's about half the nut width. And we'll, I don't know what's going that way, going this way. There we go. Moved a little bit, but not much. Okay. So now, take that measurement again. And it's going to be it's pretty much still the 12 3/4. Alright, so I'm still back to taking 6 inches out of the middle of this thing. Now, I want to have enough room for my threaded rod to go in pretty far. So, let's see. I make my first cut there. Make my first cut here. That'll give plenty of room for this threaded rod to go down inside there. I'm not going to even drill that deep, but I just want to give myself options. Okay. And then if I take 6 inches out of that, where's that going to leave me? Not good. It's way the heck up here. Geez, can I take 6 inches out of this and still give myself some trouble here? Let me try this again. What if I took 6 inches right out of the middle? This barrel part is 9 inches long. So if I take 6 inches out of that, that's going to leave me 3 inches, which will only let me leave 1.5 inches on each side. So 1.5 inches there. That'll work. That'll work. Leave 1.5 inches of rod here. Maybe go 3/4 to 1 inch in with my threaded rod hole. So I just can't leave as much as I wanted to of this rod. It is 9 inches. I do want to take 6 out, which will leave me 3 inches total, and I want the 2 halves to be about the same size. 3 inches divided by 2 is 1.5 inches. So, like Norm Abrams used to always say, measure twice, cut once. Right?